What's up, smart homers? My name's Aaron. In this video, I'm going to show you 7 different smart locks that work with Home Assistant. Smart locks provide a way to know if our doors are locked even when we're away. They allow us to remotely lock and unlock the doors, give people access when we're not home, and tons more. The problem is there are a ton of different smart locks out there on the market. So which one do you choose? That's why I bought 7 different smart locks from a few different brands, and I'm going to compare their prices and features and show you how they work in Home Assistant. At the end, I'm going to tell you which ones are my favorite and which ones are my least favorite. As in the past, the requirements for my selection were that they have to work with Home Assistant, they can't require their own manufacturer's hub, they have to work with either Wi-Fi, Zigbee, Z-Wave, or Bluetooth, and if they're Wi-Fi, they can't require cloud connectivity to function. I didn't find any Zigbee locks for a good price, but I did find a few that have a Zigbee option, and so when we come to those locks, I'm going to let you know that they have a Zigbee option. Note that the no hub requirement assumes that you have Home Assistant set up and have Zigbee, Z-Wave, or Bluetooth radios added to your Home Assistant instance, and that's going to be your hub. In future videos, you may see that some of the shots of the products that we're looking at don't have that same butcher block desktop that you've seen in a lot of the videos in the past. This is thanks to FlexiSpot, the sponsor of today's video. They sent me their E7 Pro Plus standing desk for me to try out, and I must say that I'm super impressed. The desk features a heavy-duty metal frame with telescoping legs that comes in either white or black, and a bunch of different options for the desktop surface. The legs each have a motor that can exert 800 newtons or 180 pounds of force, and they can go from a low height of 23 inches all the way up to 48 inches. It's extremely easy to put together and has a super sturdy feeling to it. I recently refinished a closet near my office, and I'm working on getting it set up to use as an alternative shooting location as well as a place to store my 3D printer, and this desk fits perfectly in the closet. If you're working from home and you want a high quality standing desk that doesn't wobble even at its max height, head to flexispot.com where you can actually build your own desk. Thanks to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. Okay, so first let's look at the Wi-Fi devices. The first one we're going to look at is the Eufy Touch Wi-Fi Smart Lock. This lock comes in both black and brushed nickel variants, and while I prefer the brushed nickel most times, in this case I thought the black looked awesome. The lock comes with all the hardware you need, and the unboxing experience itself shows that it's a quality product. The lock is mounted to your door with a metal plate, but the plate has a rubber gasket-like material on the side that faces the door, so your door's paint doesn't get scratched. I think it also helps reduce the noise of lock rotation due to vibration, but we'll get into that later. The exterior keypad also has rubber on it, helping seal it and probably giving it that IP65 rating. Each piece of the hardware you get is laid out in boxes with labeling so you know when you should use them, making the assembling and mounting of it super easy. It comes with a deadbolt and strike plate, but unfortunately those didn't work with my old door. Thankfully, the existing deadbolt did work, but between testing this one and the rest of the locks, I actually bought new doors, so this wasn't a problem for the rest. Like most smart locks, you put the mounting plate on the inside of the door and then put the keypad on the outside, pulling the cable through the provided hole. 2 screws hold the plate onto the door, and then you can connect the inside part of the lock. There are a couple of screws that hold this part onto the mounting plate, and then you're ready to install the battery. You should test the deadbolt action and make sure it's smooth before proceeding. This one uses a rechargeable battery that's supposed to last for a year. As I mentioned in the beginning, I don't want a lock that requires cloud connectivity, so that was my hope with this one, but I really wasn't sure. I found a custom integration in Hacks to bring this door lock into Home Assistant, but when I blocked this door lock's IP address from accessing the internet on my router, the lock wouldn't function. As far as I'm aware, there's no way to use this lock in Home Assistant without cloud connectivity, and that's a real shame. If you're still interested in this lock, even though it requires cloud connectivity, keep watching because since I bought the lock, I'm going to go ahead and review it anyway. But if you're not interested, just skip to the next lock. Once the battery is installed, you can install the Eufy app and walk through the steps to set it up. Once complete, you can add a fingerprint and multiple key codes if you want, and then use that Hacks integration that I mentioned to add the device to Home Assistant. In Home Assistant, you get a lock entity, a global motion sensor, a battery entity, and a streaming sensor. Since this integration is actually meant for cameras but also happens to work for the lock, the motion and streaming sensors are really useless and can be disabled. Locking and unlocking the door is actually fairly responsive, but remember that it is cloud-based, so if Eufy's cloud is down, this isn't going to work at all. I really wasn't sure that this integration did require the cloud until I installed the integration, and you can see in Home Assistant in the integrations page this nice little cloud icon, which is a reminder that it needs the cloud. The device really feels solid and heavy in the hand, and the feel of quality kind of surprised me. The lock mechanism worked really smoothly. That's also a function of how well the deadbolt's aligned, and I just installed these doors, so it should be pretty well aligned. The front has a small round metal cap that covers the keyhole, which at first was a little hard for me to open. Overall, the matte black look is something I had to get used to, but it might not stand out and even look appealing depending on what the rest of your house looks like. The fingerprint unlock action is super cool and works extremely quickly. It was by far the quickest of any of the locks to open. Another cool feature is that there's a little USB port on the underside of the keypad that allows you to supply power to it. This can be used in case the battery dies and you're out of your house without the key, but you want to be able to get in. You can apply power and then the lock will function. The keypad is nice, but it does show smudges from your fingerprints, so it could give away your code. A feature that it has to combat this is that it allows you to put in a bunch of random digits and then your code, which means that more keys will be smudged than the ones for your actual code. You gotta wake up the keypad with a touch, and then you can go ahead and type in your code to unlock the door. To lock it, you just press the lock icon. While this lock had one of the quietest mechanisms of all the locks, and it was super easy to install with great instructions and a great unboxing experience, and even the fact that the fingerprint sensor was that responsive, to me doesn't make up for the fact that it has cloud connectivity requirement. The next one is the August Smart Lock Pro 3rd Gen. I chose this lock for a special reason because even though it's a Wi-Fi lock, which can be accessed via the August Connect Wi-Fi module, the lock itself communicates with that August Connect module via Z-Wave. I figured I could just connect this lock directly to Home Assistant via Z-Wave, but it was kind of a nightmare. August locks are well known because of their ability to unobtrusively control your existing deadbolt. With just a removal of a few screws, you can replace the existing deadbolt's thumb turn with a motor. It still allows for manual control of the lock, and it also allows you to use the original key when you're unlocking it from the outside. It's really great for someone who's renting an apartment maybe, and they have to use the same key that their landlord gave them, but they want to control the lock remotely. Mounting the lock is pretty simple provided you know what type of door it fits on. If you have a grid style front door like you might get from Home Depot or Lowe's in the US, this lock is not going to fit. I made the mistake of trying to install it on my back door and didn't get very far before I realized the problem. I'll explain this problem in a second. To mount the lock, you need to remove the thumb turn and attach the provided mounting plate to the door with the thumb turn screws. After that, you can use one of the provided deadbolt shaft adapters based on what type of deadbolt you have, and then attach the motor itself. When you're attaching it, you open the two locking wings on the back side of the motor, push the motor onto the plate, and then close the locking wings, securing the motor to the plate. Here is where I ran into trouble. If you have a door with a grid style window configuration, where the windows extend down to the door lock hole, the grid is probably going to protrude too closely to the door lock hole, and you won't be able to push the lock onto the mounting plate with the wing open. This means that you won't be able to secure the motor to the plate, and that's pretty annoying. I ended up putting on my front door to do the testing. Once installed, you can remove the magnetic battery cap and install the batteries. After this, you'll need to walk through the app to perform the setup. There are two ways to add this device to Home Assistant: via Wi-Fi with the August integration or via Z-Wave. The problem with the August integration is that it requires cloud connectivity. It's not directly talking to your lock itself via the August Connect, but instead is talking to the August Cloud, which is then talking to your August Connect, which is talking to your lock. As I've already explained before, this isn't ideal. If you want to pair it via Z-Wave, you first need to set the lock up in the app. Your phone is going to connect to the lock via Bluetooth, and then you can run through the setup. To add the lock to Home Assistant, you first put Home Assistant in inclusion mode, and then go to the lock settings in the app, tap Z-Wave settings, and then tap add to Z-Wave network. I found that you need to have your lock right up next to your Z-Wave radio, so I actually got a 20-foot USB extender and brought my Z-Wave radio right up to the lock. Once added and you open the device page in Home Assistant, you're met with a red warning message that says that the lock will stop working and become unusable at some point. You also see a lock entity, door status entity, a lock jam sensor, a battery level sensor, and a low battery level sensor. This warning message is no joke. When operating the lock via Z-Wave at first, it's super responsive, unlocking and locking when you ask it to from Home Assistant. But if let sit for several minutes, it becomes unresponsive and seems to go to sleep and will not respond to Z-Wave commands. The only way to wake it up is to manually unlock it or lock it, or to lock it or unlock it via Bluetooth. Once this is done, it seems to wake up again and it begins receiving Z-Wave commands again. However, a few minutes of inactivity and it goes back to sleep. In the August Cloud integration device page, you get a lock entity, wake button entity, operator entity, and a battery entity. Since the August app allows you to add other users in the app that can control the lock as well, the cloud integration will tell you which user is the one that opened the door, which is kind of cool. I also noticed that the Z-Wave integration and the August cloud integration report different battery levels for the device, so I'm not sure which is correct. The lock itself has a knurled grip, which feels great to turn. It does take less effort to install than some of these other locks, and may be a better option for people who don't really want to make a lot of changes to their existing configuration. The lock is super quiet when operating the deadbolt and does have a great feel to it, but that cloud connectivity is an issue. If August could develop a local API and work with Home Assistant to provide a local integration, this would be super cool. The lock did come with a door sensor, but honestly I didn't feel like testing it out. Okay, let's take a look at some Z-Wave locks now. The next one is a Kwikset 916 with Z-Wave module. This lock has to be one of the best looking in my opinion, and probably sticks out the least of any of the locks. It comes with a few different finishes, but I chose brushed nickel, and it also has an option for Zigbee, but I chose Z-Wave. It comes with all the hardware you need, but since I had a Kwikset deadbolt already installed, there was no need for me to even change out the deadbolt hardware. One of the main reasons why I chose the Kwikset is because it has the smart rekey feature, and since I use Kwikset locks already on my other doors, I could rekey the smart lock to use the same key. To install the device, you need to remove your existing deadbolt hardware and then install the deadbolt striker that comes with it. Then you install the keypad on the exterior, slipping the connector cable through the hole. To secure it, you need to put the mounting plate on the inside of the door and then use 2 screws provided to hold it in place. Next, you'll add the motor part to the lock, first connecting the cable and then pressing it onto the mounting plate and installing the screws that keep it in place. Without the cover on, you'll see some dip switches that can be set for different options. 1 turns off the status LED that blinks every 6 seconds. 2 enables or disables auto lock, which will relock the door 30 seconds after it's unlocked. 3 turns off the sounds from the keypad and unlock and lock alerts. And 4 turns on or off secure screen, which displays random digits to be pressed before entering the user code. This last one acts similar to the Eufy and ensures there are smudges on more than just the digits that you're actually pressing. Before you put the cover on, you'll need to install the battery pack. The pack has slots for 4 AA batteries and slides into the top of the lock. Once it's in, you'll see the status LED come on and the lock will beep. You put the lock into pairing mode by pressing the button marked with an A, not the large red button like you'd expect. You'll see a red LED light up when it goes into pairing mode. Like all the Z-Wave locks in this video, you need to have your Z-Wave coordinator, in my case a USB stick, right up close to that lock for it to be included securely. Otherwise, some features may not show up in your lock. I saw someone on an online forum call this whisper pairing, which I think is a pretty good name for it. In Home Assistant, you see a lock entity, a door status entity, which does nothing, a lock jammed entity, a battery level entity, a tamper sensor, and a few others. The lock jammed entity seems to work, but once a jam is detected, it doesn't seem to clear. The tamper alert also seems to stay detected once it's triggered by too many wrong keypad attempts, and I'm not sure how to reset these. There are actually 2 disabled entities that you're going to want to enable, and those are alarm level and alarm type. Alarm level and alarm type are entities that are used to tell you what's actually going on with the lock at a certain time. I found a table and some Kwikset documentation that tells you what each of these alarm levels and alarm types mean. I'm going to put a list of all the alarm levels and alarm types on my website, so if you need a reference, you can always go there. Configuration options allow you to set the different user code types, owner, guest, or worker, and it also shows you the status of the different dip switches. This lock did have one or two drop-offs from the Z-Wave network in the time that I've had it, which is a few months, but my Z-Wave network was having some issues, so it could have just been that. There can be significant lag from the time you tap the button to when it actually unlocks, between 5 to 10 seconds, but that's pretty typical for most of the Z-Wave locks that I'm going to show in this video. Like I said before, I really like the look of this lock better than most, but I may be biased because I have Kwikset hardware on the rest of my doors. They did a great job of making the interior part of the lock look good, and the whole thing feels high quality. To unlock the door, you have to type in the code. If it's unlocked, a tap of the lock icon will lock it. One thing I don't like is how you have to put your hand over the screen to wake it up. It'd be easier with just a button press to wake it up, but it does prevent accidental touches. Once you wake it up, you have to tap the random numbers and then your code. I also noticed that I'm accidentally bumping the screen with my arm as I walk through the door because the screen is still awake after I've unlocked it. This is something that wouldn't happen with physical buttons. This lock is actually the loudest lock of all the locks in this video, which is one of the issues and pretty much the main issue I have with it. It's so loud, I'm honestly worried that it's going to wake up our kids at night, so I don't want to operate the lock. Next, we have the Schlage Connect Z-Wave version. This device is the most expensive of any of the ones we're going to look at in this video, but it does come from a very reputable brand in the lock industry. It has quite a hefty feel to it, and the interior part of the lock is huge compared to some of the other locks we'll look at. It also comes in a few different finishes, but I chose brushed nickel. It has an option for Zigbee, but I chose Z-Wave. The deadbolt and the rest of the hardware is included, and it wasn't compatible with the Kwikset deadbolts I already had, so I had to change mine out. Once I put in the Schlage deadbolt hardware, the installation is pretty much the same as with the Kwikset. You attach the keypad and slide the cable through the hole underneath the deadbolt hardware, and then you put the mounting plate on the inside and secure it to the keypad with the two provided screws. Then you connect the cable to the interior portion of the lock and attach it to the mounting plate. Once it's on the plate, you attach it with some screws. Testing out the bolt movement, I found it was very smooth. After that, you just take out the battery pack, install the 4 AA batteries, and then put it back in and attach it to the battery connector. Keeping the back cover off, you can see the red pairing button on the Z-Wave PCB. Pressing that will put it into pairing mode. But before that, I had to have my Z-Wave coordinator attach to a USB extender and brought it right up against the lock in order for it to pair properly. Once paired, you see a lock entity, a couple entities that don't seem to do anything, battery entity, and like before, there are two hidden entities that you need to enable, which are alarm level and alarm type. Similarly to the Kwikset, the alarm level and alarm type are going to tell you what's going on with the lock and will also tell you which user has unlocked it. Also like the Kwikset, this lock can handle up to 30 access codes. The configuration options allow you to enable or disable the beeper, turn on and off alarm mode, enable or disable local controls, and allows you to turn on and off the auto lock, which is a 30-second relock after it's been unlocked. And you can even set how long a user's pin has to be. I really like the look of this lock, like the Kwikset, but I do feel like the numbers on the keypad are in a font that just doesn't match the aesthetic of the rest of the lock. Weird complaint, but kind of bothers me. While I'm not a fan of the font, the fact that the numbers light up blue is pretty cool. The keypad isn't exactly a touchscreen like the Eufy or Kwikset locks, it's more of a keypad, with a roughened surface that hides the fingerprints pretty well. Of course, pressing the same code over and over again is probably going to wear into the keypad, so you got to watch out for that. To unlock the door, you can type in the code and it unlocks after the last digit without the need to press any other key. To lock it when you leave, just pressing the Schlage logo will do the trick. This thing really feels high quality despite how bulky it is, but my biggest issue with it is the price. It fluctuates significantly depending upon the trim, finish, and protocol you go for. At the time of trying to buy one of these, it was close to $350 for Z-Wave, and the Zigbee version was out of stock, so I had to pick up one on Facebook Marketplace. I'll leave links to each version in the description so you can check the prices yourself and see which one you want to buy. Maybe you'll get lucky and the price will be lower than what I found it for. So let's move on to another Z-Wave lock, and that's the Ultraloq U-Bolt. There's something about the simplicity of this lock that makes me love using it. The outer part of the lock has a plain zinc body, and this one has a physical buttons on it rather than a touchscreen. This is great if you're worried about fingerprints. The interior part of the lock is quite small and has an attractive matte black finish. It comes with a door sensor that can be attached to the door frame, allowing the auto lock function to work when it senses that the door is closed. They also provide a screwdriver, which is a nice touch when that's the main tool you need to install it. Of course, it comes with deadbolt hardware, as with most of the locks in this video, and it's pretty straightforward to install. You can't use your existing deadbolt hardware due to a special shaft shape, so you're going to need to install the deadbolt hardware provided. Once that's done, you can attach the keypad to the exterior, slip the cable through the hole, and then slip the cable through the hole in the mounting plate. The hole in the mounting plate is just big enough for the cable connector to fit through, but it's supposed to go through, and then the cable will sit in the notch at the bottom of that hole. You then secure the mounting plate to the keypad with the 2 provided screws, and then you attach the cable to the interior part of the lock. After that, it can be attached to the plate with the 2 screws that are underneath the battery cover. Testing out the locking mechanism, it turned super smoothly and there's no need for any adjustment. I then installed the provided AA batteries, installed the battery cover, and went through the process in the app. The UTech app connects to your lock via Bluetooth and allows you to configure it. Once you've gone through the setup, which involves installing the door sensor if you'd like, you can go into the settings page and put the lock into inclusion mode. In Home Assistant, you get a lock entity, a battery level sensor, and a low battery level sensor. The optional door sensor doesn't show up either, and unlike the Kwikset, Schlage, and Yale, the Ultraloq doesn't have alarm level and alarm type sensors. This is because it only supports very basic Z-Wave commands. This means you can't tell which user has locked or unlocked the door, you can't tell if the door is jammed, or anything like that. This being said, for a simple and reliable lock, maybe you don't care about knowing that information. Like I said before, the simplicity of this lock really lends to its reliability, and it made me want to use it as a daily driver. It has a really smooth bolt action, and its motor is one of the quietest of all the locks I've tested, on par with Eufy. If you're worried that the button numbers are going to rub off, they're actually transparent and part of the button, not just printed on. When the lock is active, the numbers light up, which is not only a cool effect, but also makes them super easy to see at night. This means that there shouldn't be an issue with the numbers fading or rubbing off over time, or on the buttons that you press most frequently. One thing to note with that door sensor, if you wanted to use that, it does have to be mounted down low by the deadbolt, which means a kid could grab it and try to yank it off the door frame. The next one we have is the Yale Assure SL with Z-Wave module. The version of the Yale lock that I chose is a bit different than the other ones because it actually doesn't have any physical key operation. This lock has multiple versions, including one with a key, and it also has a Zigbee option instead of the Z-Wave one that I chose here. I chose keyless because adding another key to my keyring is not something I really want to do. It comes with all the hardware you need, and the smart module is actually separate, meaning you have to install it during the lock setup process. Once again, I had to remove the existing deadbolt hardware and install Yale's. Just like with the previous locks, you slide the cable into the bottom of the door hole and then attach the keypad. Next, I installed the mounting plate that was provided. You'll notice that both the keypad and interior mounting plates both have rubber gasket pads that help with weather resistance. This also makes them less likely to ruin your door's paint and probably help with vibration noise. The mounting pad can be secured with 2 screws, and then the cable can be attached to the interior portion of the lock. Once again, a couple of screws are used to secure it to the mounting plate. After this, a quick test of the locking mechanism should feel smooth without any resistance. Next, I installed the Z-Wave module, then installed the batteries, and replaced the battery cover. Once installed, you'll be required to put in a master code, and then it will test the operation of the deadbolt and do its calibration. Using the keypad, you follow the instructions in the manual to put the lock into inclusion mode. Once again, it's best if you're using your Z-Wave coordinator right up close to your lock during pairing. In Home Assistant, you get a lock entity, a keypad temporarily disabled entity, a power applied entity, a door status entity, a lock jammed entity, a battery level entity, and a few more battery type sensors. Like with a Kwikset and a Schlage, you need to enable the alarm level and alarm type entities if you want to see the alarms as entities. Like with a Kwikset and Schlage, I'll have a table on my website listing the different alarm levels and alarm types for your convenience. Yale has by far the best documentation on these alarm levels and types. When I tested the lock jammed entity, it stayed jammed for a while, but at some point it did go back to OK, not jammed. It may be that it waits for a Z-Wave network restart to go back to OK, but I'm not sure. The Yale lock can apparently handle up to 250 user codes, which is crazy. Configuration options allow you to choose the volume of the alerts. It allows you to enable and disable the auto relock. It allows you to set the auto relock time. It allows you to set the number of attempts before you are locked out because you typed in the wrong code. It allows you to set the language of the lock. It allows you to set how long you're going to be locked out if you type in the wrong code too many times. And it also allows you to set it back to factory defaults. Overall, this lock has to be one of my favorites, but we'll get into my favorites at the end because it doesn't require a key. Another great feature that makes it stand out above the rest is the fact that it has a set of terminals on the underside of the keypad. If the battery dies when you're out of the house, a 9-volt battery can be pressed against the terminals to power the lock temporarily so you can type in your code and gain access. This lock has been super reliable both via keypad unlocking and directly in Home Assistant, and it's quieter than the Schlage or the Kwikset. Alright, so the last lock we're going to take a look at is a Bluetooth lock. When I started this comparison, there weren't too many Bluetooth locks available, but since there have been some changes to Home Assistant and recent releases to the Bluetooth capabilities, there are a bunch more I'm sure that are compatible, but I'm not covering them in this video. If there are other ones that you've tried recently that you love, let me know in the comments. This lock is the Level Bolt. This thing is the world's first invisible smart lock, or so they claim, featuring a motor with a 6-stage stainless steel gearbox, a magnetic deadbolt mechanism that houses the battery, and all of this hidden inside your door. It's super quiet since the motor is small and is hidden inside your door, and it comes with the motor, the bolt, some tailpiece adapters for some common lock shaft types, a strike plate, and the necessary screws. It has an extender for the bolt if you need a longer one, and it's powered by a CR2 battery. As I mentioned, it's a Bluetooth lock, so the biggest concern that you're going to have with this one is Bluetooth range. But recently, they've made some changes to Home Assistant where you can do Bluetooth range extending. To install the lock, you first install the bolt part into the door. You really need to change out the strike plate as well, since the hole required for the bolt is larger than what's required for a typical deadbolt. Once that's installed, you need to add the motor portion and then tighten down the set screw that holds them together. Once that's in place, you can go ahead and add the tailpiece adapter that works for your lock shaft type, and after that, install your original lock thumb turn and keyway, just the way you would with a normal deadbolt. You can then test out the manual operation, which should feel super smooth. Now it's time to install the battery, which you can see actually sits inside the bolt's shaft. Although it seems like it would make the bolt very easy to break, the bolt still has an ANSI grade 1 rating, and Level wants you to know it. You first need to get the device set up in the Level app, which is pretty straightforward, so I won't show you that. In Home Assistant, it should be automatically recognized via the HomeKit controller integration. When you go to add it, you'll have to type in the HomeKit pairing code that comes with the lock, and then it's going to be added. In the device page, you have a lock entity, but that's pretty much it. It has unlocked, locking, and lock states, but that's all. I have to say that I love the idea of an invisible smart lock. In fact, someone recently gave me the idea of making a video about the invisible smart home, where everything smart is hidden so you wouldn't know it was smart unless you were looking for it. So if you guys are interested in me making a video like that, let me know in the comments. The ability to keep the same key and the same thumb turn while having a smart lock inside the door is super cool. What you're missing out on is a keypad, of course, but also the range of Zigbee, Z-Wave, or Wi-Fi smart locks. This being said, this does have the basic locking and unlocking that any smart lock should have. Of all the locks I've tested, this one had the most frequent delays before responding. It may be the Bluetooth technology, but this was the lock that I found myself a couple times standing at my back door, tapping the button without my key, hoping that I'm not locked out. Anyway, thanks for sticking around to the end. We're almost done here. Let's go over which ones are my favorite, which ones are my least favorite. If you want just a simple, reliable lock that can be controlled with Bluetooth or Z-Wave and works with Home Assistant, you can't go wrong with the Ultraloq U-Bolt. If you don't care about getting fancy in Home Assistant with knowing who's unlocked the door or anything like that, this lock is great. And they actually have a pro version which features a fingerprint sensor as well. The name of the game with this one is simplicity, reliability, and quality. If you're looking for the cheapest, the Kwikset 916 was actually the lowest price of any of the locks I looked at. While it was the loudest of all the locks in this video, if you don't care about the noise, the features you're getting for that price is a great deal. I have heard reports that keypad, if exposed to direct sun for a long enough time, can start to crack, but I haven't seen that in my case. I'll definitely leave some sort of update on my social media if that occurs. If you want a high quality lock with great features, great documentation, and you really don't care about the price, go for the Yale Assure SL. It's quieter than the Schlage or the Kwikset, and it's well documented and very robust in terms of Z-Wave communication. If you want it with the physical keypad or if you want it with the key, you can get it that way. But I have to say, this is probably my single favorite lock of all the ones I've tested. It does come at a hefty price, but it may be worth it to you. Okay, so here are the ones I would not recommend. The first one is on my naughty list because of the price, and that is the Schlage Connect. It fluctuates anywhere from $200 to $400, but sits around $300, and that's just way too much in my opinion. You might say it's the Cadillac of smart locks. It's big and expensive, but it does work well. If you can find it for a good deal, say below $300 or maybe below $275, I'd say it's worth getting. The next one I wouldn't recommend is the August Pro 3rd Gen with Z-Wave, which is actually the most disappointing of all the locks. While that Z-Wave communication was extremely unreliable, it did work well with that August Connect and the August cloud integration. But again, the August cloud integration means that if the cloud's down, you're toast. It may be great for rental properties, but for now I'd say skip it. Lastly, we have the Eufy, and as you probably already know, the fact is that the cloud integration pretty much crosses it off my list. Despite having 3 alternative ways to enter your home via keypad, physical key, or the fingerprint scanner, the fact is that not being able to remotely unlock and lock the device is just a no-go for me. I really did love the hardware, wanted to like this lock, but I can't recommend it. Anyway, I hope you liked this video and hope it gives you a good idea of the smart locks that are out there and how they work. I know it's been a long time coming, so I apologize, and I hope I'll get some more videos out a little bit quicker in the future. My biggest piece of advice with any of these Z-Wave locks that I've looked at is get a USB extender and bring your Z-Wave coordinator right up against that lock. If you did enjoy the video, please take a moment to press the like buttons. That really helps out with the algorithm and getting more people to see my content. And let me know in the comments if you have any different experiences with these locks. I'll also be doing more comparison videos like these, as well as automation idea videos and home assistant how-tos. So if you're interested, hit subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when my next video comes out. Anyway, thanks for watching. See ya.
Press